Good evening and welcome to episode 11 of Mix with a Newb. Tonight we are going to talk about ducking refinement using modulation. This is a topic we already covered previously. We just touched on it briefly. I'm going to go into it a little more detail. We're going to talk about EQ. And just a quick note, a couple of the last videos I felt like the vocals were too low. So I've got the mic much closer. I hope that it brings the level of my vocals up without being too much. Let me check my levels here. Yeah, that looks pretty good. So personal note from the, like I said, from the last video, at the very beginning, I'm just going to talk for a minute or so about myself because I know that people enjoy that as part of videos. It's something that I've read. I've talked about the gym a couple of times. I'm doing a 6-week, 20-pound challenge through a gym here in Tucson called Psychosomatic Fitness. This is a program where you put a large deposit down. You have to do 30 workouts within 42 days, which is essentially 5 workouts a week is what it breaks down to. I mean, you can do them, you could do 20 in a row and then take time, they don't care, but I'm doing them consistently 5 a week on each weekday. So that's what I'm doing right now. It's like a CrossFit based program. The workouts are all CrossFit they're clearly CrossFit, but they don't want to pay the licensing fee to be a CrossFit gym. And there's also a pretty strict eating plan, which is all kind of clean food like an athlete would eat as far as, training for some event. So it's all lean proteins, vegetables, which they're very strict about, no fruit. And then I do get to eat some carbs, but it's like sweet potatoes or oatmeal or quinoa, like real clean carbs. And it's only twice a day, breakfast and lunch. So it's going really well. I'm down almost 17 pounds in 2.5 weeks, which is really good. And I was told tonight at the gym that everybody hits kind of a stall at week 2. And I'm like halfway through week 3. And they said week 3 picks up again. And then week 4 and week 5 are really when you drop another good amount of pounds. So that's what's up with me. Let's get started on mixing tonight. So what I have here in front of you on the screen is this EQ chart. It's an interactive one, which is really awesome. And I've used this several times. I keep coming back to it. If you just Google EQ cheat sheet, this will be one of the top results on the list. I will provide the URL to it. It's from independentrecording.net. This is really wonderful. The thing we're going to start with tonight is going to be cymbals. So let's look. If we have brass. So at the very top here, we have vocals, percussion, brass, woodwinds, and strings going down from the top left down. And then we have, what we have is a piano, a standard piano, or, a grand piano keyboard layout. So this gives you an idea of frequency. And down here, we have these different tones, which the more mixing videos and things you start to watch, you start to hear all these different terms that people use a lot. Crunch, warmth. There's a lot of them that some people hate, some people use a lot. So it has that down here to kind of give you an idea of where, okay, I want to get the sibilants out of this vocal. Go to sibilants, go up, look for vocal, and find, okay, so I maybe want to cut in the 4 to 6K range. All right, so let's look at percussion. We are going to primarily be affecting the cymbals at first here. So I'm hovering over this, and when you hover over it, I have to leave the mouse over it. But if you look at the legend down here, so I'll show you the legend, and then I'll go back to the cymbal that I'm hovering over. This will give you information if you just keep it on the instrument or the voice that you're looking into. So this says mid-range, frequency range 200 hertz, 250 hertz to 2000 hertz. Low order harmonics of most instruments. Too much 5000 to 1000K can be honking. Too much 1K to 2K can be tinny. Instrument data, cymbals / hi-hat. Clang around 200 hertz. Presence around 3000 hertz. Shimmer between 7.5 kHz and 12 kHz. So that's some basic info that if you want to have numbers, but also have like a descriptive, a thing that you can kind of latch onto as a creative concept. If it's difficult for you to just look at an EQ chart and hear and go, okay, I know this is supposed to be this, and be judicious or robotic about your cuts and stuff, something like this will give you an idea of how to, translate. Well, I knew the cymbals needed a little more shimmer, so I'm going to boost from 7.5 to 12K. In this case, the first thing I want to start with is I want to kind of dampen the cymbal sound when the snare hits. So presence is at 3K. So when I switch over to Reaper, we're going to go directly into the what I was calling the ambient bus, where all my cymbal sound lives. I'm going to throw an EQ on there. I'm going to zero right into 3K, and we're going to begin right there. Also, if you look at the legend at the very bottom right there, I'll move my mouse again and go back to the cymbals. Here's the legend. The info I was reading pops up here in instrument data, and also the spectrum data was the first info I read. And then you're going to actually have this ear sensitivity chart, which is pretty cool. Kind of hard to really get what the idea of this is, but it has decibels on the side and it has frequency on this side. So you can kind of roughly see, like, at 3K, I mean, it's a hard chart to read. Let's hover back over cymbals. Okay, so that actually tells you right there. Between, those range, I'm pointing at the screen as if you can see what I'm pointing at, but it gives you that ear sensitivity chart. Pretty cool. Down to the very bottom, legend. The black with red border is low fundamentals. Then we have a solid red, which is fundamentals. Yellow is our harmonics. And our black box with a yellow outline is overblow, breath / air, which I believe that sounds like for like woodwind instruments, brass and woodwind. And then property range is the thin red line. So that's how to interpret what that line means. So the low fundamentals of our cymbals looks like it straddles just below 200K and bumps up to around 300K. So that's the low fundamental. So that's another area that I'm going to be affecting. And those are two dips that we can make in the snare. We can make, or I'm sorry, in the cymbals when the snare strikes. So let's remember what I said. At 3K hertz and between, let's say, 180 and 300K, 300 hertz. So between 180 and 300, and again at 3000. So let's switch over to Reaper. Here's my ambient bus. I'm going to go ahead and open the FX, and I'm just going to put REQ on there, re-EQ. I'm tempted to call it REQ, but that's not right. So we're going to start with frequency number 3, or point number 3. I'm going to change this to 3K. There it is. We'll just leave that as it is now, and then let's get this. So we said between 180 and 300, which if we split the difference, what is that? That's 120. So 60 from 180 would be what? 240? So let's set this one to 240. So we're kind of straddling. We're going, oops, not 2400, 240. Okay, and we're going to make these, let's make these pretty wide. That's pretty good, but I'm going to make it actually a little wider. Yeah, there we go. This one also a little bit wider. And we can always change these. You're not stuck with any of these things that you initially set, so don't worry. The idea is that we're going to use modulation like we did in the previous video to, whenever the snare hits, these are going to come down. So what we want to do is send from the snare bus, we want to make a send to the ambient bus. And we're going to go channels 2 and 3, or 3 and 4. And again, that's what we call side chaining. And it does not provide extra audio in the signal. So wiggle this around. You grab a hold of it. If you move it up and down, you're telling it, I want to affect the gain. If you're going left to right, you want to affect the frequency. For the most part, you're going to want to affect gain. And what do we say this should be at? 240. All right, we'll leave it at 240. Oops. The other thing I think you can do is you can actually wiggle the button. which might be a lot easier because you won't be tempted to slide left and right. Your hand won't want to jitter on there. We're going to hit parameter, go down to parameter modulation / MIDI link. You get a pop-up box here. And we're going to do audio control signal sidechain. All right, so that now it makes it bigger. Actually, this one you cannot expand, unfortunately. Thought I was going to make it much bigger. All right, so then we have a drop down here, which is asking for our track audio channel. We are going to go to 3 and 4. When I hit the space bar, we should have signal coming through here. Voila, there we go. All right, so I'm going to leave this one off to the side. So this is, again, this box is the setting to modulate this frequency, which is on the ambient bus, and it's fed by the snare. So every time the snare strikes, it's sending signal through using routing, hitting this control modulation control, and then affecting the EQ over here. So maybe it'll be easier if I make it like this. So imagine the audio is coming from the left, hitting this and going to the right. We'll do it kind of down like this, since the snare is above the ambient bus. Snare out through this to our EQ modulation. Now, first thing you want to set, you notice when we turn this on, our bass line is all the way down here, and that's why this took such a dramatic dip. So let's put this at middle. This is a quick tip. Anytime you want something to go to the line that's in the slider, double click it and it jumps to it. Quick way to return something to where it was or bring it to the middle. All right, so that brings this to exactly 0 dB. Now this we want to have a very quick attack because snare hits are very short strikes. So let's say 5. 5 is probably good. And we want a pretty quick release too. You could say like 50. And we're going to want to hear how that sounds. Now, I know I always say don't mix in a vacuum, but the thing is you do want to hear how you're affecting to make sure that you're making a noticeable difference. So we're going to solo the ambient bus here. And let's see what it sounds like. Okay, we're not giving it enough. So and it's set to positive. All right, so if you have it set to positive, what you saw was this was jumping. I think maybe we have too much release because you can see it's barely jumping at all. Let's see here. Let's go to 200. Around 200. There's 202. All right, here we go. Yeah, see, it's okay. Let's set the attack to 0. Now let's bypass it. Enabled. Yeah, I think I'm gonna go dramatically high with the release because it's letting off of it too fast, I think. And also we can dial our strength down. We also may want to change the bandwidth on this. So I'm going to stop now. If you notice, so what I'm noticing is that it's, and again, this may be very hard to detect in the audio for the tutorial as you're watching on your phone or laptop, and I understand that. I've got the headphones on, so I can hear things a lot better. It's a direct speaker right in my ear, and these are like the sound isolating kind. These are actually designed for drummers when they're recording, so I can hear very clearly in my ear. So when I say like, oh, it's working, and you're staring at your phone, you're going, what the heck is this guy talking about? I don't hear anything. It's because of the difference of what you're listening on. Now, if you are at home and you're on headphones, I hope that you can hear what I'm hearing, which is like the snare splashes and the cymbal sound just like hushes. Like it just kind of, it's hard to describe, but you get sort of a little bit of a pumping sound. But I do want to change the width of this because I think it's too wide. So actually, let's just set it to 2. Let's go a little more narrow than that even. I'm going to give it a little more strength. Actually, what I want to do now, I'm going to close those both out. We'll come back. I'm going to zoom into one of these snare hits, and I want to kind of get a good feel for the length of one of these so that our hold is appropriate. Because if your hold is too short, then the effect isn't noticeable, and if it's too long, then you're kind of like messing with your cymbal sound. You're not getting that fundamental, like we looked at the EQ chart. Let's go back to it real quick. EQ chart. So we don't want this low fundamental to be too neutered. Only word I can think of off the top of my head. All right, so I'm measuring this snare hit from the point at which it first hits, which I think I'm actually too far out. Okay, so we'll say, it's not that big of a difference to go. We'll go right there to the beginning of it, and roughly where it goes back to 0. And we have 43 milliseconds. So realistically, our hold could be very, very short. Oops. Wow, that was loud. I'm sorry about that. Let me mute that tab. I apologize for that. I am such a noob. All right. So what I was saying is we measured 43 milliseconds. I'm going to reopen these, what I had open here. Oops, that's the wrong one. Let's go to our snare bus. There it is. That was snare verb. All right. Actually, that's not what I had open. What I had open was the modulation. So again, you wiggle it, and then you open your parameter modulation from this param button. All right. So let's change that release to, you said 0.43, so let's put it at 50 milliseconds just to be sure. 50. And this may not make any difference at all in your headphones at home. Whoa, okay, that was bad. We had the loop set. That's because I had the repeat set and I was on a very, very short section of the song, essentially one snare hit. Sorry about that. All right, here we go. All right, so that's okay. It may be too quick. It's again, now I'm not even hearing it. I'm going to put the strength all the way to 100 and see if that makes a difference. I'm going to turn the snare bus on. Let's bypass this. Bypassed. Enabled. It's real subtle. But that's what we want. We don't want to add something that's noticeable in the mix, because we're not designing sound using this trick. We're refining. We're refining before we move on to vocals. We want the instrument portion of the song to sound very clear. So we're going to do a very similar thing over here. What I'd like to do is I'd like to set this one up so that it's noticeable even. I mean, my goal would be so that you could even hear it at home, which may not be realistic. I mean, I'd like to pull it up on my phone tomorrow and hear it and go, oh yeah, that's ducking like crazy. We'll see how that turns out. All right, so let's hit play again. Okay, why is 2? Okay, again, we had this set to positive, so we want to go negative. And this one's not. Gain for band 3. Now everything should be working here. You know what? I'm wondering if we probably need to give it. I don't know that we can sidechain twice off of the same signal. I've never tried this before. So let's see if we can do another. Yeah, let's do new channels, and let's go 5 and 6, and let's try that. I think that's maybe all I need so that they're independent signals on different channels. So if you didn't understand what I did there, what I have is, since I'm doing 2 different modulations on this EQ, I set the first one, this band that we were just working with, to channels 2 and 3. I'm sorry, 3 and 4. And since I'm moving to a new modulation setting for band 3 here, I went ahead and added, using routing, I added 2 new channels, 5 and 6, so that they're independent. And this should work now, I believe. Okay, it's not doing anything. It's not good. Oh, maybe my attack is too... There it goes. Okay, so it wasn't doing anything because my attack was set to 300 milliseconds, which the snare hits are just way too short for that. And as you can see, this is making a huge duck. And now it's not working. So again, my attack has to be pretty low, it looks like. Which makes sense because the other one was set to 0. Yeah, see how it makes a huge cut. So again, if the width is too much, you're not going to change anything over here. You're going to go into the EQ plugin itself. Make sure you're set to the band you're affecting, and then you can change your bandwidth. Oh, that's right. I wanted to make it dramatic at first. I remember now. All right, so let's set it to 4. It's going to be just... And we'll turn off... I'm going to turn off the snare. Okay, there. That should be clearly audible. Let's bypass it. That's just clean. It still has this lower frequency. The fundamental is still being ducked, but the upper one isn't. Now I'm going to enable. Yeah, you should hear that kind of like shushing. Let's do a much faster release. We'll do 1/10 of a second, 1 millisecond release. So you should hear like a shushing, almost like a pumping sound. There, that's really super noticeable when it's just the snare and kick by itself. All right, that should have been enough for you to notice the difference in there. So that's a real dramatic example of what we're trying to do. So we're going to drop this bandwidth back. Let's go back to 2. Let's drop the strength of it because we don't want it to be that dramatic. And let's put this, just say 50% to start. I think 50% might be too little. My instinct is just telling me that's not going to be enough. Yeah, that's not enough. Let's go to 75%. Let's turn the snare back on. Okay, I'm bypassing it. Listen for those cymbals. Enabled. Okay, probably gonna need more strength. Yeah, I think that's pretty good. What I'm hearing, what you want to listen for is after you hear a snare hit, listen for the cymbal to kind of rush back in. And that's kind of the idea, is that the cymbal sound just moves out of the way enough for the snare to be real crisp, and the cymbal comes rushing back in to kind of fill in the gap. And as I've said before, we're not going to mix into a vacuum, so I'm going to leave my things open, and I'm going to turn everything back on, except I believe I still have the vocals muted, the vocals muted. And let's listen to it. Okay, so I'm happy with this. It's something very, very light, and I've talked in previous videos about making, affecting changes to your mix that are light, that aren't heavy-handed, because then you're getting into like sound sculpting where you're like corrupting the raw sound of it, and this song doesn't call for that. So we've just kind of made, we're trying to make the instruments kind of dance around each other. In a way, you want to shoot ideally for something that the ear would hear if you were standing there live in the room. Because if you had bass and guitar there, and they were right in your face, when they were really laying into the notes, really chugging, or the snare was really snapping, your ear would, perceive the snare hit for a second, and kind of like, your ear kind of like dampens as it hears a loud peak of something. Your ear has like a natural dampening ability, and then that dampening would let up and the cymbal sound would rush back in. So it's kind of you're trying to make it kind of sound natural. At least that's my philosophy on it. That's what I've heard before and kind of what I've adopted. I don't know which of those two is better to use or more apt. I think they probably both work. I have adopted the idea and I've adapted the techniques that I've kind of stolen from other people, which is what everyone does. Now, you don't want to blatantly steal, as in like sample someone's thing and just slap it on there and call it your own. I'm not about that. Next thing we want to do, I want to make the vocals duck the guitar. So we're going to do ascend from here, change it to 3 and 4. And this is essentially going to be exactly what we were doing before. Let's go back to our EQ chart. Sorry about clearing my throat into the mic like that. That is it's another noob thing I need to get over. All right, so let's take a look here. We have male. We're hovering over it. Frequency range. 60 hertz to 250 hertz for bass. Wait, does this change? Yeah, it does. No. That's strange. Brass, percussion, vocal. I'm trying to see what this spectrum data... Okay, so the spectrum data changes if you move across the frequency going from higher to lower, lower to higher. That this top box up here will change. So you can read about, in general, what that range of frequencies adds to a mix. The instrument data box in the very middle here populates when you hover over a specific voice. Okay, so instrument data for male vocal, fullness at around 120 hertz, boominess at 240 hertz, presence and recognition 2K to 4K hertz, sibilance. I'm going to drop the word hertz because I think you understand that they're all hertz. So sibilance is from 4K to 9K, and breath/air 10K to 16K. So I think what I'm going to do here, I'm going to do something similar to what we did with snare to cymbal. Pretty much exactly the same thing. We'll do one at 120, and we'll do a spread from 4K to 9K. So if we split the difference, that's 5K. So 2.5K from 4K, 6.5K. All right, so 6.5K and 120. We'll say that. Let's go back to Reaper. For this, I'm actually going to add a separate EQ, because this is something I don't want this to be heavy-handed at all in the mix. In fact, this might be one where we can turn down the saturation using this percentage, the saturation button knob over here. We could actually put this to like half or something where it's just barely kissing the guitar. I like to use that term kissing. I think it comes from like snowboarding or skateboarding where you like kiss the rail. The same idea. You're just like coming up to the thing you want to do and just like boom, putting a little right on it and then leaving. You're not doing like a complete board slide where it's just like scraping down the whole thing, like, you know. All right, so 120, and then what did I say? 6.5K. So we'll put this one to 6,500. All right, so it's exactly the same procedure as last time. Oh, that's right. Let's do that. Let's do that channel 5 and 6 again. 5 and 6. There we go. All right, so parameter 2. Again, we're going to wiggle the gain. That tells us, hey, I want to affect that aspect of that parameter. Hit your parameter button, parameter modulation. It's enabled. We're going to do audio control signal. This one's set. We'll do 3 and 4 on this one. And I believe I may not get signal because it's muted. There it goes. Okay. So for this, I'm going to do just vocals and guitar. Ooh, that vocal is really high. I can tell right away that vocal's too much. So I'm going to go ahead and drag it down. Let's drop that by 2. So we'll bring this to negative 13. See if that's any better. Probably should be. Yeah, that's better. All right, so again, the vocal is feeding the modulation parameters, and that is then affecting this point on the EQ, which we're laying over the guitar. And again, our goal is just to make the make the vocals duck the guitar just gently so that it makes room in the mix when he's singing. Because your ears really want to hear the vocals. Of course they want to hear the guitar, but just kind of in a subtle way. All right. I'm going to change it to the settings we had for the snare, but I think we're going to want to make it different. Let's see. Let's do a slower attack, just so it's a little more gentle. We're going to set this to negative. There's our bass line again. Let's see what we got. Oh, it's barely moving. See that? Barely moving. So maybe the attack needs to be... No, maybe the release needs to be longer. Huh. Wow, okay. We did set it to negative, right? Maybe the attack needs to be 0? Okay. So if your attack is too high, you're missing a lot of signal. Let's zoom in on this, I guess. Because of the words, yeah, there are no secrets. So there's enough drop in signal here as he goes through to make it need a faster attack. So we have it set to 0 because I wanted it to be a little more smooth. So let's set it to 1. Let's just try 1. Oops, that's 2. 1. We'll do a release. I think that's probably too high. Let me bring this down to maybe 200. No secrets. Things are out of hand. All right, I'm going to disable the other EQ on the guitar just so that this is the only one affecting it. No secrets. Things are out of hand. They think that they can't reach us. Bypassed. No secrets. Oh, now it's just staying on. Oh, I'm sorry. It's because I bypassed it. Dummy. That's another noob moment. I'm looking at it going, hey, it's not moving at all. Well, it's because you bypassed it, noob. All right, let's put the other one into play. So 5, didn't I say 65? I must have done something wrong. Yeah, I definitely did something wrong. All right, let's get rid of one of these zeros. Oh, come on, 65. No. All right, I'm getting really bad at typing because I'm getting tired. This is ridiculous. Let's dial it in manually. 6,500 roughly. Actually, I'm getting to be like a perfectionist with this because I know I can type the number in. For some reason, this is being a pain. 6500. You little... Oh, I don't know what it's doing right now. It's being a pain. Anyway, I don't want to obsess, so I'm going to put it roughly right at 6,500 and not worry too much about it. 6507, there we go. Oops, and I moved my mic. I hope my voice didn't get too quiet there. All right, so this is the same idea. We're going to wiggle the gain. Oh, and this is a high shelf? What is, oh, because we're on 4. That's why. Okay, I'm going to turn this one off. Go to 3. Okay, so I clicked on the wrong point. So that's noob moment number 2. Yeah, I love those noob moments. So I had clicked on 4 and I was going, what is wrong with this one? And the reason I couldn't type that number in there was it was a high shelf. So there we go. We're going to wiggle the gain. Set this back to 6,500. I'm obsessing about it, but why? It doesn't want to take that number. 6,5. Oh. 0. 0, 0. 6. Ay. All right. God. I don't know why that's being so different. I wonder if it's because it has... One of the other ones has parameter modulation set, so it makes it... You can't type the number in as easily. Because it seemed like before... Let's just test my theory. Before I typed the number in real easy, and it was no issue. Yeah, I think that's what it is. If you have parameter modulation enabled, for some reason when you try to enter a number manually in here, it enters very strangely. It makes it like sticky or something weird. I don't know what. I can't explain that. All right, so we know we're on the right one. We're going to wiggle the gain. We're going to go open our parameter modulation again. I'll leave this one over here, and this is that band 2, the 0.2, and let's do control signal, and 5 and 6. There it is. And it's okay. And the reason again it ducks so hard is because we have this baseline set all the way low. So when we move this, if we set it to 0, it's going to even out. And it's not moving now because our attack and release by default are set to 300, which is much too long on the attack. So we want to put this one at, I think we had the other one at, was it at 1? Yeah. And it's set to positive, so it jumps. So we're going to set this to negative. There it goes. Things are out of hand. They think that they can reach us from an ancient land. No secrets. Oops. Oh, okay. I had disabled this one. All right, that's it. There's a couple of spots there where it really dipped. I hope you heard that. And it just made the guitar kind of sound like it was like draining right there. So that's where he's really laying into the vocals. I'll turn them back on for a second for you. So that is what you want, but that's too drastic. That's too much. For me, that's too much. So I think maybe the release is the thing I want to adjust now. Let's see. Yeah, let's just put this release lower and test. Maybe if it releases better. I don't know. I guess if it releases too quickly, then the guitar comes swelling back in over the vocals, and you've kind of defeated the purpose. No, I guess that's okay. Let's turn the other EQ back on. Yeah, that works. And again, we don't mix in a vacuum, so let's turn the whole mix back on. And now the vocals sound too low. Interesting how that works. When I heard just the guitar and vocals were much too loud. So I drag them down by 2 dB, and I throw the whole mix back together, and what do you know, guitars sound fine in the mix, and the vocals sound too quiet. So that's a pretty good example of why you don't mix something. I mean, you can mix two elements off of each other to sort of get a bass line, but you don't want to try to make any final decisions until you've heard it against the entire mix. Now, I do want to, at this point, excuse me, I'm going to go ahead and mute the vocals again. That's where I was. I just wanted to have the, let's make sure that this ducking is actually working. You know what, I guess it doesn't, okay, so it doesn't work while it's muted, but we still want it to work. So I'm wondering if now changing it to pre-fader would actually, let's see here. All right, so we're going to look for the one. Guitar is receiving from vocal. See, I'm wondering if this, if we change this to pre-fader, if that's what I would actually want. No. Pre-FX? No. So, okay, so that's something that I haven't really got the hang of yet. I guess I can have the vocals unmuted, but just completely, but that'll probably kill the signal too. It's still working. Why did this modulation turn off? And that one's extreme. Wow. I don't know how that happened. Did I turn this one off? No. That is so weird. It just, let's bring the, oh, sorry about that. something happened with number 2, and it's really extreme now. Maybe it's it's probably this percentage. Let's compare percentages. Okay, why is it not letting me have more than one open? I thought I could. I could have swore I could just have more than one open. Is this going to let me toggle between the two? Band 3. Okay, 100%. So I guess the main difference is the release time. That's so weird. Number 2. This is so weird. It's not letting me open. A minute ago I had both open. Maybe if I disable that one. I'm still learning the behavior of this myself. Okay, I'm really noobing it up here because I'm not sure how to have 2 open. I could have swore it worked a minute ago. Maybe it only works when you initially add it. And then, see, no, this one's... Okay, so attack at 54. Let's switch to 3. Attack it. They're identical. Okay, band 3. I did something really wrong here. I have a feeling maybe I have band 2. I can't get band 2. I cannot get band 2 to come up. It's so weird. See, it keeps saying band 3. So maybe if I have to wiggle this again. There it is, band 2. Okay, right? Yeah. Now if I switch to 3, wiggle this. Can I get this one to come up? There we go. All right, so that's the difference. Whichever one it's just like when you initialize it, whichever thing that you touch last, you wiggle the gain on, then it pops that box up. And you can have more than one open, you just have to switch between them. So I'm trying to compare here and see what, yeah, they're pretty much identical. That's really strange. Right? Release, yeah, they're identical. Yeah, I don't understand why this one is so outrageous. That's interesting. You learn something new every day when you're a noob. Wow. I'm just trying to compare the difference between the two because you can see this one is really flying down. I mean, it's really ducking hard. And also, if you look at this shaping here, this little graphic that they have, this one for band 2 is really jumping quite extreme. And I'm not sure if I'm missing something. They look identical to me. So maybe it just has to do with the frequency, the amount of God, I mean, I don't even know how much EQ is coming out of his... I don't even know. Wow. But it sounds okay to me. We're going to listen to guitar off of vocal and watch the EQ bounce and see how that sounds. Nah, see, it's too... Wow, okay. When you listen to them by themselves without the rest of the mix in there, I mean, that's extreme. You can hear that guitar kind of like stuttering. Let's hear it again. It's almost like an effect. It's like beeping. Wow. Okay. We're going to change the strength of number 2. Let's put it to 75%. Let's see if... That's better. That's probably still too much. Let's go to 50. There we go. So essentially, what I'm listening for, when a word happens, you hear the guitar just kind of be pushed to the back briefly because your focus goes to the vocals. no matter what, when you're listening to the song, your ear is focusing on the vocals when there's vocals present. In between the words, when his voice dies off, you want that guitar to swell back in, but not to the point where it's like a beep, 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 like we were hearing initially. So I think this is set right about where I want it. And this one ducking that hard is actually okay because the lower elements of the mix will kind of also fill in that gap. So let's listen one more time. Again, we don't mix in a vacuum, so we're going to, I know you guys are probably sick of hearing that term, don't mix in a vacuum. I didn't coin it. I've heard it elsewhere. And it's something so important because early on, I would spend time mixing elements together and like, you know, oh, this sounds amazing. I love this. Like kick and bass. It'd be like, oh, this is dialed in. And then I'd turn the whole mix back on and it would sound like garbage. So it's important to do the changes you're doing to two things in solo, together, soloed, and then turn the whole mix back on and adjust from there again. That sounds good. I'm going to end there for tonight because I'm sure this is running on long. Let's take a look. Oh yeah, we're at 46 minutes. So thank you for hanging in there with me. That was episode 11, Mix with a Newb. We covered refinement of ducking, which again, to duck a track is to take the signal from something else. And when that signal is present, it makes another track duck, lower its volume. And you see this in other things like voiceovers. If somebody's speaking and there's music in the background, you want their voice to make the background music, you know, be squashed, go down. And then when they stop speaking, that music comes back up a little. So you hear this a lot maybe without even knowing what it is. So I think it's important to have this stuff going on. And I may actually do more of this in the mix. You know, the bass I haven't affected. I may, and again, I'm biased because I am the bass player. I may want that bass. I actually do want the bass to duck in a couple of spots, but I need to look into it. I can go back to my EQ chart here. And like I said, I'll have this interactive EQ chart in the video notes because this is a really handy thing to have. So if we checked out bass, we could get some more information here. Attack, we have like snap/string noises at 2.5K. So I could have it duck from the kick at 2.5K to make the kick stand out over those, because some of those slapping notes are pretty sharp. You hear the sharp attack. So I would continue, but I don't want this to be an hour-long tutorial. So again, thank you for watching. We did ducking, refinement, and we used parameter modulation, which is different than automation. They're kind of a similar idea, similar sort of, because you set some things up and then they automatically happen as the track goes along, but they are different in one way. And we will get to automation. I'm definitely going to do some automation on the vocals for maybe some like kind of light echo effects and stuff like that. So again, thank you for watching episode 11 of Mix with a Newb. I will see you next time.